Do you keep dying in hardcore dungeons? Now you can throw away your hearthstone and never lose a character again. Guaranteed! Introducing Flask of Petrification. Escape in seconds with no macros and your hands never touch the keyboard. This revolutionary flask keeps you safe while the timer ticks down to kick you out of the dungeon. It's that easy. Ogres got you down in Dire Maul? Not a problem. Watch how it protects you from your raid leader giving you the business for pulling threat. Just one click and your marital problems are all solved. 2 original flasks of petrification, only $19.99. Here's how to order. Call 1-800-GOAGANE. That's 1-800-GOAGANE. Welcome back, hardcore death clip enjoyers. Or if your ear holes have yet to be deflowered by the stay a while experience, welcome. Here I'm going to dig into the current hot button issues of classic World of Warcraft community, and we're going to dissect both sides of the conversation and of course meme on everyone involved. Before we start digging in, not a sponsor, okay? Not a sponsor. Since I'm ultra new, I'm sure my viewing retention is going to be just awful, so I wanted to do this early on in the video. I need to give all these guys a shout out and genuine thank you. All the people on this list are S tier hardcore streamers, and they've just been amazing in helping me on my YouTube journey. If any of these names are unfamiliar to you, please look them up on Twitch and throw them a follow and indulge in their content. Alright, let's get back into it. Lately, you can't go into any form of social media about Classic WoW without somebody talking about Petri Flask. Reddit, Discord, Twitch, it's everywhere. So sit back and buckle up. We're gonna deep dive this subject, and eventually we'll talk about the best conclusion for official servers launching in the next few months. I'm going to assume that the god tier gamers that would indulge on content like mine are informed on the subject and know what flasks are. And if not, I have to ask, how did you get here? Seriously, how in Tyranda's neatly trimmed bush did you find my channel? Alright, so let's make sure we're all on the same page here. Flasks are the golden standard for rating consumables, and Blizzard just freaking loves them. Flasks have been in every single expansion since launch, and aside from a very small amount of changes in Classic and Wrath, and a couple expansions where they briefly toyed around with cauldrons, they are the same today as they were on launch like 20 years ago. Now, I will note that there was a very brief period of time with launch when you could actually have every single flask active, and it should be noted that even under these circumstances, Ret Pallies still did no damage. It's always been the same gameplay formula. Lots of farming, running around, big temporary buffs for endgame content. The majority of flasks give a massive buff to one stat for an entire hour, and it persists through death, though that last part is less relevant on hardcore. Then there's Flask of Petrification. Flask of Petrification was regarded entirely as a joke in classic World of Warcraft, so much so that Wowhead and Wowpedia don't even list them if you look up classic flasks. Not even that long ago, the hardcore druid king god himself Graze for Days was memeing on these.
And then we have Flask of Petrification. This thing's just a joke. Each flask costs 30 stone scale oil, and it's a one-time use. But you could have some fun with this flask in the right scenario.
Wait, hold on a second. This is Gray's pre-road to Ragnaros, and this is Gray's today. I don't know what his secret is, but he doesn't look like he's aged a day since then. Hardcore definitely hasn't taken the toll on him that it has on other streamers. So what Flask of Petrification does is it prevents all damage to your character for 1 minute, but it freezes them in place and it prevents them from attacking or casting spells. Basically, you're like the Tanuki suit in Super Mario. In Hardcore, this flask sees regular use preventing character death. They're even given as a bit of a door prize for fresh 60s entering HC Elite to keep the character alive. These can give a healer a chance to catch up, the tank time to reestablish threat, or just as a general whoopsie doopsie button when you pull threat. So on their own, strong, but not crazy, right? Someone else still has to save your bacon when you push the button. The biggest issue people have with them is when they're used to abuse other game mechanics. To understand what I'm talking about, you have to also understand what ghetto hearthing is. So dungeons are designed to only allow one group inside at a time. If you're ever not a part of the group that created the instance ID, like if you drop the group or you get kicked out, the dungeon starts a 1-minute timer and then it just kicks your character out of the instance. So what people have been doing in hardcore is if they get in a bad situation in a dungeon, they immediately drop group, then they Pop one of these bad boys and it gives them a safe, guaranteed escape from the dungeon. People's takes on this have been a little all over the place. They range from hashtag no changes to calling for the item to be completely banned from hardcore. So I dug through all of the Discord and Reddit conversations about this, and there's like hundreds of posts about it. So I went ahead and narrowed it down to a handful of bullet points summarizing both sides of the conversation. Up first, we have Petri goes through most boss mechanics. So here's the actual breakdown of that statement. The reality is there's less than 10 mechanics in Classic WoW that ignore Flask of Petrification. I went ahead and did some little graphics to represent that. Here's Molten Core. There's one mechanic, Baron Geddon's Armageddon. Blackwing Lair, two mechanics, Burning Adrenaline, Shadow Flame. AQ40, two mechanics, True Fulfillment, and Cthulhu's Stomach Acid. And last but not least, Nax Ramus, which hosts the lion's share of mechanics that ignore Petri. Now, I'll note here that while I listed all the mechanics to be thorough, some of these just won't kill a character, like the Necrotic Aura on Lotheb. While the healing reduction debuff technically goes through Petri, the boss still doesn't have any ways to actually deal damage to you through the effect. So we did a bit of a deep dive on the first point, and I'm going to rapid fire through a few of these because they kind of go together. Petris are cringe, banning game mechanics is cringe, HC Elite is cringe, Westfall Andes are cringe, cringing is cringe. So I'm sure we've all noticed the recent meta on the internet is if you dislike something for one reason or another, you just label it as cringe instead of voicing your reasoning for your dislike in any kind of constructive manner. I decided we need a new rule on the internet, and I'm calling it Rule 35. If it exists, it's cringe, and you should be ashamed for liking it. I am, of course, no exception to this rule. What I would like to say the root statement here would be I don't like how the gameplay of Petri feels, which is understandable enough. I can absolutely see how when they're watching someone in a high stress, super volatile situation, watching them escape death with a few simple clicks probably feels like when they're on fire and about to dunk an NBA Jam and their little brother shuts off the Nintendo. It's a bit of a buzzkill, pretty boring gameplay. Why is Petri hearthing allowed when Light of a Loon and bubble hearthing isn't? So this is actually a good take, but I want to pause and clarify some of the confusion I see here. The rules on the website are actually pretty dated. I don't believe anybody's updated it in over a year at this point, and since then they've actually made Light of a Loon hearthing allowed at level 60, which to me is actually even weirder to add caveat needing to be level 60 to using them. But I agree that the theme of these rules is inconsistent, particularly when you need to be level 50 plus anyhow on a paladin to bubble hearth. But these rules are inconsistent across the board. When you figure Petri hearthing, Light of a Loon, and bubble hearthing, they're all the same thing. They're escapes, they're get out of jail free cards. It's weird that certain ones are allowed under certain circumstances and certain ones are not. It would be nice if they decided to stick with their guns and go on one side of this or another. It's weird to have little nuances that differentiate one style of the escape from another when ultimately they're the exact same thing. If it's not Petri, it'll just be something else. So this is also very true. If it came down to banning Petri Flask, up next immediately to the chopping block is going to be precasting mage portals, as you can currently escape bad situations by just clicking on a portal. And what's next from there? Evade spots? You can see how this kind of turns into a bit of a witch hunt where we're chasing down whatever methods people are using to escape death. And this basically segues into my wrap up. I don't want to ramble on for too long for this video. I like Flask of Petrification by itself. I think the core problems with it come from conflicting rules and ghetto hearthing. I think by itself, it has the potential to create cool gameplay interactions with hardcore. Like here, where a paladin pulls Doomlord Kazakh on accident and uses a Petri to give the raid team time to move in and save her. That said, I do feel like if they entirely removed Petri Flask from the game on official, as well as in combat mage portals, the game would only benefit from the change. I think the risk of consequence and loss increases the value of items and accomplishments. Things that minimize the risk of consequence erode the value of gameplay and take away from the overall experience. Simply put, things are more valuable when there's a real chance of losing them. I am hopeful Blizzard does consider some changes on the official server, maybe something like making Petri unusable during the countdown for the dungeon port. And to be fair, Mage Portal use seems kind of like an oversight since you can't cast teleport while you're in combat currently. And that's all I got for this one. If you guys have any other ideas or any theories to throw out there on the subject, please comment down below. Thank you, thank you, thank you for watching. Insert typical YouTuber demands here. I'll see you guys in the next one. Later, gamers.